Emma Carter sat slumped in the cold plastic chair of the emergency room, her back pressed awkwardly against the wall, her head rolling to one side. Her right arm rested in her lap like dead weight, grotesquely swollen, shiny, and flushed an angry red that turned almost purple near the shoulder. It radiated heat like a furnace. Nurses bustled past, their sneakers squeaking on the polished linoleum, but none of the sounds pierced the fog in her mind. Her fever was climbing past 103. She couldn't stop trembling. Red streaks ran like rivers from her shoulder to her neck, thin, jagged lines, angry, terrifying. The nurse had called them tracking. Emma hadn't understood. She barely understood anything anymore. Karen Carter crouched next to her daughter, gripping her hands so tightly her knuckles were white. "Emma," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Honey, stay with me, okay?" Emma didn't respond. Her lips were dry, cracked. Her skin was pale except for that arm. God, that arm. The ER doors burst open again, and a tall man in navy scrubs entered the curtained space with a clipboard tucked under one arm. Dr. Ethan Lewis, early 40s, composed but clearly alarmed. His eyes went directly to the arm, then to the red streaks crawling toward her collarbone. "This is bad," he said, more to the nurse than to Karen. "We've got rapid tissue swelling, high fever, lymphatic spread, potential necrotizing fasciitis. Prep for surgery. Now." Karen stood up. "Wait, what? What did you say?" Dr. Lewis looked at her with clinical but not unkind eyes. "Your daughter has a very serious infection. It's spreading fast. We need to cut into the arm to relieve the pressure and remove dead tissue. If we don't act immediately," he hesitated, then delivered the blow, "she could lose the arm, or worse." Karen's knees gave out. She clutched the side of the bed for support. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "How did this even happen?" Emma stirred, her voice barely audible. "It was just a blackhead." Dr. Lewis frowned. "A blackhead?" Karen turned toward her daughter. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" But Emma's eyes were glassy. Her head lolled again. The nurse was already injecting something into the fourth. "She's tachycardic. BP's low. We need to move now. Let's get her 2 or 3, Dr. Lewis said firmly. "Page Dr. Patel for surgical assist." Karen followed as they wheeled Emma out, her legs numb, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Just a blackhead? What the hell had she missed? Behind her, the ER curtain swung back into place with a soft whoosh, leaving the chair empty, the air buzzing with urgency. What no one knew yet, not the surgeons, not the nurses, not even Emma, was that this didn't start with a disease. It didn't start with some catastrophic injury. It started 7 days ago, in a bathroom mirror, with a teenage girl trying to look perfect for prom, with a decision so small, so ordinary, so utterly forgettable, that it could have happened to anyone. But for Emma Carter, it would change everything. 1 week earlier, the world was still normal. Emma Carter stood in front of her bedroom mirror, holding her hair up to examine her bare shoulders. The strapless satin prom dress hung from her body like liquid gold, catching the soft glow of the fairy lights strung across her ceiling. She turned slightly, checking the fit at her ribs, then twisted just enough to see her shoulder blades. "Not bad," she murmured, brushing a bit of lint off the fabric. Prom was in less than 2 weeks. She had the dress, she had the shoes, she even had an appointment for hair and makeup. Everything was falling into place. Everything had to be perfect. Emma was 17, a senior, and she was the starting outside hitter for her high school's varsity volleyball team. She wasn't just good. She was being scouted by 3 Division I schools. Her coach said she had raw power. Her mom called her driven. Her friends just called her intense. She didn't mind that. She had to be intense. There were hundreds of girls just like her, all fighting for the same scholarships, the same spots, the same future. If she wasn't perfect, on the court, in her grades, in how she looked, then someone else would be, someone always would be. A sharp knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Emma, sweetheart, it's after 11, her mom called from the hallway. "I know," Emma said. "Just a minute." Karen Carter sighed audibly, the sound muffled through the door. Emma rolled her eyes. Her mom meant well, but lately everything between them felt tight, like they were each walking on some invisible thread, just trying not to snap it. She turned back to the mirror for one last look and froze. Right there, on her right shoulder blade, a tiny dark speck, not a mole, not a freckle. Something else. She squinted, then twisted further to get a better view. "Is that a blackhead?" It wasn't big, but it was noticeable. And in that dress, with her hair up? Absolutely not. Emma grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and angled the beam toward her back while trying to hold a compact mirror in her other hand. The angle was awkward. She nearly dropped her phone twice, but she got just enough visibility to confirm, yep. It looked like a deep clogged pore, dark at the center, a little raised. She felt her stomach twist. Why now? She reached over her shoulder and pressed around it with 2 fingers. Nothing happened. The angle made it hard. She switched hands and tried again, digging her nails in slightly. It stung. She winced but kept going. A small bit of clear fluid oozed out, tinged with blood. She sighed. That's fine. I'll deal with it later, she muttered, wiping it with a tissue and tossing it into the trash. She didn't disinfect the area. She didn't even look at it again. She was tired. Tomorrow was another day, and she had practice. By the time Emma walked into the gym the next afternoon, the small blemish on her shoulder was already forgotten. She'd slept funny and her arm felt a little sore, but nothing unusual. She'd played through worse. Coach Miller had them running drills, fast-paced back row defense, followed by spike transitions and scrimmages. Emma went hard. She always did. Nice dig, Carter, Coach shouted across the court. Emma nodded, sweat dripping down her temple. Her shoulder throbbed. After practice, in the locker room, she peeled off her hoodie and saw it in the mirror. The spot on her shoulder was redder now, slightly raised, maybe even a little swollen. Huh, she said aloud. From behind her, a voice chimed in. What's that? Emma turned to see Lena Brooks, her best friend, frowning at her reflection. Just a blackhead I tried to pop, Emma said. It looks angry. It's fine. Did you clean it? Emma hesitated. I wiped it off. With what? Emma shrugged. Lena raised an eyebrow. Emma, what? I was in a rush. Still, I said, it's fine. Lena didn't argue, but the concern lingered in her expression. Emma didn't want to deal with it. She had homework. She had to shower. She had to look at her scholarship email from Vanderbilt. There was always something. A little red spot wasn't going to derail her week. Not now. Not when everything else was going right. The next morning, Emma woke up with a dull ache in her shoulder. She sat up slowly, flexing her arm, testing the motion. It didn't feel injured, just tight, like it had been pulled or strained somehow. She rubbed the sore area with her left hand, and her fingers paused when they reached the spot she'd picked the night before. It felt warmer than the surrounding skin. She got up and went to the bathroom. Turning her back to the mirror again, she checked the area. The red patch had grown. It was now the size of a silver dollar, raised and slightly shiny. The center was darker, almost purplish, and it was definitely warm to the touch. Emma leaned in closer. Maybe it was just bruised. Maybe she'd pressed too hard. She told herself it would go down by afternoon. At school, she kept her hoodie on, despite the warm spring weather. By third period, she was sweating, but she refused to take it off. Every movement of her right arm tugged uncomfortably at her shoulder. She shifted in her chair, trying not to wince. In the hallway between classes, someone bumped into her. Emma yelped, loud enough to draw attention. She looked up to see a freshman staring at her, wide-eyed. Sorry, the kid muttered before hurrying off. Lena caught up to her seconds later. Are you okay? It's fine, Emma said quickly. Just got jostled. You flinched like you got stabbed. Emma exhaled. It's that thing on my shoulder. Still sore. Can I see it? Not here. Emma, I'm fine. But she wasn't. By lunch, it felt like her shoulder was pulsing. Not in a sharp, stabbing way. Just a constant throb, like something alive was building under her skin. She barely touched her sandwich. In the girls' restroom, she carefully peeled back her hoodie and stared at the mirror. The red spot had grown again. It was now the size of a fist, hot, swollen, and painful. Someone came out of a stall behind her and gasped audibly. Emma yanked her hoodie back down. By the end of the day, there was a blurry photo going around on Snapchat. Someone had taken it when her hoodie slipped during lunch. The caption read, "Ew, WTF" is on Emma's shoulder. She saw it in the locker room after practice and nearly threw her phone across the room. Lena sat down beside her. Ignore them. Emma didn't reply. It looks worse, Lena added gently. I know. Have you told your mom? Emma shook her head. She's stressed with work. You need to see a doctor. Emma stayed silent. Lena reached into her backpack and pulled out a tiny first aid kit. At least clean it. I have alcohol wipes. I'll do it at home. You said that yesterday. I said I'll do it, Lena. Her voice was sharper than intended, and Lena backed off, her mouth pressed in a tight line. Emma felt a twist of guilt but said nothing. The next morning, Emma stood in front of her mirror again, and finally admitted this wasn't right. The swelling had spread down her upper arm, creeping toward her tricep. Her skin looked tight and shiny, almost stretched too thin. When she tried to lift her arm above shoulder level, a bolt of pain shot down her side. She bit her lip to keep from crying. For the first time, fear settled in. She decided to visit the school nurse between second and third period. Nurse Hall was in her office, sipping coffee and scrolling through something on her tablet. She looked up when Emma knocked. "Hey there, what can I do for you?" Emma hesitated. "I think I have an infection or something. On my shoulder. Let me take a look." Emma slid off her hoodie slowly, grimacing as the fabric brushed the swollen area. Nurse Hall squinted, then leaned closer. Emma watched her face carefully. "I popped something 3 days ago," she said. "It's gotten worse." Nurse Hall frowned. "It does look irritated. Probably an ingrown hair or a cyst. Maybe a bit of inflammation. It's hot and swollen. Like a lot. Well, that happens sometimes when the body's trying to fight bacteria." Emma's throat tightened. "Should I see a doctor?" The nurse shrugged. "You could, but it doesn't look like an emergency. Just keep it clean. Warm compresses. If it gets worse, go to urgent care." Emma nodded slowly, even though her gut screamed that this was not normal. She pulled the hoodie back on, thanked her, and left. Outside the office, the bell rang, and the hallway filled with noise and movement. Students pushed past, laughing, texting, shouting over one another. Emma moved with the crowd, her mind a blur. Nobody had really looked at her. Nobody had really listened. By the third day, Emma couldn't ignore it anymore. She woke up to a dull, pounding pain in her shoulder that made her stomach flip. She swung her legs out of bed and moved toward the mirror like she was walking to her own sentencing. With shaking hands, she peeled her hoodie off and looked over her shoulder. The inflamed area had grown. Again. It was nearly the size of a softball now, a swollen mass of angry red skin stretching from her shoulder blade down into the upper part of her arm. The center was darker, like bruised fruit. The skin was tight and shiny, like it was under pressure. She pressed lightly on it and immediately regretted it. The heat was intense. She winced and pulled her hand back. She tried lifting her arm. It moved only a few inches before the pain shot up like a live wire. She clenched her teeth to stop herself from crying out. She didn't have time for this, not with prom 10 days away. Not with a home game on Friday where a scout from Ohio State was rumored to be watching. She chose a button-down flannel shirt that she could slip on without lifting her arms and forced herself through her morning routine. At school, she walked slower than usual, her right arm limp at her side, her face pale. She felt heat radiating from her shoulder with every breath. Lena met her by the lockers, eyes narrowing as soon as she saw her. "You look awful," she said bluntly. "Thanks," Emma muttered. "I'm serious. Are you okay?" Emma leaned against the metal door. "Didn't sleep much. Did you look at it this morning?" Emma hesitated. "It's a little worse. It's not great." Lena stepped closer, speaking more quietly. "You need to go to urgent care, Em. I already went." "When?" 2 days ago. The nurse said it was probably nothing. Warm compress. "Keep it clean." She said that just by looking at it. Emma didn't answer. "You didn't push her, did you?" "I'm not trying to make a scene," Emma snapped, sharper than she meant to. Lena held up her hands. "Okay. But if it's worse than yesterday, that's a problem. I know what I'm doing. Do you?" Emma didn't reply. She was tired. Tired of pretending she wasn't scared. Tired of the throb in her shoulder that wouldn't stop. Tired of thinking about how many girls out there would love a reason to take her spot on the team. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Now. That afternoon, she tried to practice, but something was off from the first serve. She couldn't swing properly. Her reach was limited, and when she jumped for a spike, the pain in her shoulder nearly made her lose her footing. "Emma," Coach Miller barked. "What's going on?" "Just a sore shoulder, Coach," she said quickly, trying to shake it out. "You're moving like you're carrying bricks. I think I slept on it wrong." He gave her a skeptical look. "Take a lap. Loosen it up." She nodded and trotted off slowly, her breath catching with every step. Lena followed her. "You can't keep doing this. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Sit out, tell Coach, go to a doctor." "I said I'm fine. You're not." Emma stopped in her tracks and turned, her eyes hard. Then why don't you go tell him for me? Why don't you tell the team that their best hitter is sitting out the most important week of the season because of a stupid spot on her shoulder? Lena recoiled. I'm trying to help you. Well, don't. Emma turned and walked away, biting her lips so hard it nearly bled. The guilt hit her immediately, but it didn't matter. She just needed a few more days, just enough time to get through the game, to make it to prom. Then maybe she'd get it looked at again. That evening, Karen was waiting at the kitchen table when Emma walked through the door. Hey, Karen said, closing her laptop. Hey, Emma replied without meeting her eyes. Karen studied her daughter as she dropped her backpack on the floor. You're walking funny, she said. Emma stiffened. I'm just sore. Karen stood and walked over. Is it your shoulder? I said I'm fine. Karen moved behind her and gently pulled the flannel shirt down off one shoulder before Emma could stop her. Oh my God. Emma tried to pull away, but her mom grabbed her arm, gently but firmly. Emma, what the hell is this? The swelling was impossible to ignore now. Karen stared in horror at the distorted skin, the unnatural shine, the deep red and purple bruising. Did you fall? No. What is this? I popped something. A blackhead or ingrown hair? Karen's voice rose. This is not a pimple. I know. You said you were fine. I thought it would go away. Karen stepped back, running a hand through her hair. You're burning up. We're going to the ER. No. Emma stepped between her and the front door. I can't. I have a game on Friday. Prom is next week. Karen stared at her like she was speaking another language. Are you out of your mind? Emma's voice cracked. I don't want to miss anything. You'll miss everything if you don't deal with this. I just need one more day. Please, Mom, just one. Karen looked at her daughter, truly looked at her, and for the first time in years, Emma didn't look invincible. She looked terrified. By the time Friday morning came, Emma could barely get out of bed. She lay there for almost 10 minutes, her eyes unfocused, her skin damp with sweat. The heat in her shoulder had spread down into her upper arm, and every movement sent sharp, burning jolts through her muscles. Her fingers tingled. Her head pounded. She sat up slowly and immediately felt a wave of nausea. Something was very, very wrong. She shuffled into the bathroom and peeled off her shirt with great effort, sucking in a breath as the fabric pulled across her shoulder. What she saw in the mirror stopped her cold. Her entire upper arm was swollen, grotesquely so. The skin from her shoulder blade down to her bicep was stretched and glassy, tinted a deep red that faded into purplish bruising. Thin, angry red lines now trailed from her armpit up toward her collarbone and neck like veins drawn in ink. Her breath caught. She tried lifting her arm and couldn't, not even an inch. Her fingers trembled as she touched the area. The skin was hot, the kind of heat that didn't feel natural, like there was something burning under the surface. Her thermometer blinked 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit. She stared at it, willing it to be wrong. It wasn't. Still, she got dressed. She found a loose-fitting button-up that barely disguised the swelling and somehow made it to the car. She told herself she could make it through the day. She told herself she'd go to urgent care after practice, after the game, just one more day. But by third period, people were staring. She walked stiffly through the halls, her right arm limp and unmoving. A few students pointed. She caught whispers behind her. She looks sick. Did you see her arm? Is that infection or something? At lunch, she tried to eat but couldn't keep anything down. Her forehead felt clammy. The pain in her shoulder pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Lena found her at the edge of the cafeteria, sitting by herself. Emma. Her voice was quiet but urgent. We need to talk. Now. Emma looked up with glazed eyes. Not now. Yes. Now. Lena pulled her into the nearest bathroom and shut the door behind them. Take your shirt off. What? Do it. Emma hesitated, then slowly unbuttoned the top few buttons and slipped her arm out. Lena gasped. Oh my God, she whispered. Emma's skin looked like it was about to split. The red streaks were more pronounced now, climbing toward her neck. Her shoulder had lost all shape. It was just a bulging hot mass of flesh. You have to go to the hospital. Right now. I told my mom I would if it got worse. This is worse. Emma looked away, ashamed. I didn't think. No. You didn't. There was a long pause. Lena's voice cracked. You're scaring me. Emma pulled her shirt back on, her hands barely working. I'll go to Nurse Hall. You should go to the ER. Emma didn't respond. Nurse Hall took one look and stood up so fast she nearly spilled her coffee. Jesus, Emma. Emma sat on the cot, pale and sweating, her breathing shallow. "How long has it been like this?" Nurse Hall asked, pulling on gloves. "I don't know. A few days. This is not normal. This is serious." Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue. The nurse pressed lightly on the area and stopped immediately. "We're calling your mom. You need to go to the emergency room. I have a game tonight. You won't have an arm if you keep waiting," Nurse Hall said sharply. Emma said nothing. 10 minutes later, Karen Carter burst through the door. Her eyes landed on Emma's arm and her face drained of color. "Emma, I'm sorry," Emma whispered. Karen turned to the nurse. "We're going now. I'll call ahead to the ER," Nurse Hall said, already dialing. Karen wrapped Emma's good arm around her shoulders and led her out. The hallway was quiet for once, students parting silently as they walked past. Outside, the sky had darkened with storm clouds. Thunder rumbled in the distance as they climbed into the car. Emma leaned her head against the window, her eyelids heavy, her heart racing. The red streaks on her shoulder burned like fire. Karen drove like her life depended on it, because in that moment, it did. The emergency room was buzzing when they arrived. Karen pulled up to the entrance like she was sliding into home plate, tires screeching slightly as she hit the brakes. She jumped out before the engine even stopped, flinging open the passenger door. "Someone help us!" she shouted. Emma slumped forward in the seat, barely conscious. A security guard waved them toward the sliding doors. A nurse with a wheelchair was already sprinting out from triage. "Vitals?" the nurse asked, voice clipped and focused. "Fever's 101.8 at home," Karen answered, trying to steady her voice. "Her arm, just look at her arm, please." Emma was too weak to respond as the nurse helped her into the chair. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and she was shivering violently. The swollen arm rested limply in her lap, monstrous and inflamed. The red streaks were unmistakable now, like a road map of infection crawling toward her chest. Inside, they bypassed the waiting room entirely. Someone had already called ahead. Within moments. Emma was placed in a private bay, her vitals taken, and N4 inserted. Nurses worked around her with synchronized precision, removing her shirt, checking blood pressure, inserting a second line, setting up fluids and broad-spectrum antibiotics. A voice spoke from behind the curtain, calm but commanding. "Emma Carter, 17, presenting with acute upper limb cellulitis, high-grade fever, and lymphangitic streaking." Dr. Ethan Lewis stepped into view. His gaze went instantly to her arm. Karen stood frozen at the foot of the bed, clutching her purse so tightly her fingers ached. Dr. Lewis pulled on gloves and approached Emma's side. "Emma, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, bloodshot and unfocused. "I'm Dr. Lewis. I need to take a look at your arm, okay?" Emma gave a small nod, barely perceptible. Dr. Lewis gently lifted the swollen limb. The skin was stretched beyond normal elasticity, glossy, red, and warm like an oven. He ran a gloved finger over the streaking lines heading toward her chest. Karen watched his expression shift, something between concern and alarm. He turned to the nurse. "Let's get a stat CBC, CRP, blood cultures, and a CT with contrast on the right upper extremity. Order surgical consult. Page Dr. Patel." The nurse nodded and rushed out. Karen found her voice. "What is it?" Dr. Lewis looked at her. "It's advanced cellulitis. Possibly necrotizing fasciitis." Karen blinked. Necrotizing? A rapidly spreading soft tissue infection, sometimes called flesh-eating bacteria, but that term is a little dramatic. Still, it's serious. Life-threatening if not treated immediately. Karen's knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the metal rail of the bed. "How did this happen?" Dr. Lewis didn't answer right away. Emma whispered, "It was just a blackhead." He looked at her. "Where exactly?" "Shoulder blade." "I squeezed it, with my fingers." Dr. Lewis examined the area again, tracing the spread. "Did you use anything else? A needle, tweezers?" "No, just my nails." Karen stepped forward. "She didn't even tell me until last night. I thought it was just sore muscles." Emma closed her eyes, her lips trembling. Dr. Lewis stood straight. "It's not your fault. These things can escalate fast. But this looks advanced. We're prepping for emergency surgery." Karen's head jerked. "Surgery?" "She's developing what we call compartment syndrome. The pressure inside her arm is too high. That can cut off blood flow and cause permanent tissue damage. We need to release that pressure and debride any necrotic tissue. Debride? Remove the infected areas." Karen went cold. "You mean cutting into her arm?" "Yes. How bad?" "We won't know until we're inside. Could be a few small incisions. Could be extensive. But if we wait, she could lose the arm. Or worse. Karen turned to her daughter. Emma. Emma's eyes were wet but wide open now. I'm scared, she whispered. Karen leaned over the bed, taking her good hand. It's okay, baby. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Lewis nodded to the nurse. Get her consent forms ready. Anesthesia will meet us in the OR. He paused at the door and looked back. She's young, strong, that's in her favor. Then he was gone. The nurse handed Karen a clipboard. You can sign for her. She's still a minor. Karen's hand trembled as she wrote her name. A series of tight initials next to phrases like possible loss of limb and risk of mortality. Emma looked up at her. I'm sorry, she whispered. Karen kissed her forehead, tears spilling freely now. You're going to be okay. Emma nodded, but her lips were blue. As they wheeled her toward surgery, Karen followed behind, her heels echoing down the corridor. A small piece of her still hoped this was all a mistake, that it would turn out to be nothing, but deep inside she already knew. This wasn't just a Blackhead, and they were already running out of time. The operating room was cold, clinical, blinding white lights hung over the table, casting sharp reflections off stainless steel instruments lined in neat rows. A steady beep from the cardiac monitor echoed through the space, tracking the rapid rhythm of a 17-year-old heart. Emma lay motionless, sedated under general anesthesia. Dr. Lewis stood at her side, fully scrubbed in. Dr. Patel, the trauma surgeon, reviewed the imaging results one last time on the tablet. The infection's tracking deep along the fascial planes, Patel said grimly. We'll have to open both the anterior and posterior compartments. Dr. Lewis nodded. Let's keep it clean and efficient. Time is muscle. The anesthesiologist gave the green light. Scalpel in hand, Dr. Patel made the first incision. A long, deliberate cut down the lateral side of Emma's upper arm, splitting the skin open like the seam of an overinflated balloon. Instantly, a wave of cloudy yellow-gray fluid erupted from the wound, thick, foul-smelling, under pressure. Everyone in the room paused. Jesus, one of the nurses muttered. Dr. Lewis leaned in. That's classic necrotizing, soft tissue infection. Let's move fast. They extended the incision, exposing deeper tissue. The skin peeled back unnaturally, revealing areas of blackened, necrotic muscle, a stark contrast to the pale pink of healthy tissue. Debridement scissors, Dr. Patel ordered. Dr. Lewis worked quickly, slicing away the dead sections. The stench grew stronger, but he didn't flinch. His focus narrowed to a single goal: save the viable tissue. Buy the girl a future. Anterior compartment open, he said. Pressure dropping. We're getting perfusion back. Pulse ox improving on the right arm, the nurse confirmed. But then Dr. Lewis paused. Hold on. His gloved fingers probed deeper into the infected cavity, toward the original site near the shoulder blade. Something hard met his touch. Unnatural. Foreign. Forceps. He reached in carefully, gripped the object, and pulled it out. A piece of wood, barely half an inch long, jagged at one end, discolored by weeks inside the human body. He held it up, stunned. You're kidding me, Dr. Patel said. Dr. Lewis didn't answer. The piece of wood wasn't just lodged in soft tissue. It had been there long enough to let infection take hold and spread like wildfire. It had been misidentified as a blackhead. Popped, squeezed, aggravated. Now it had nearly cost a young girl her life. Dr. Lewis handed the fragment to a nurse. Send this to pathology. Label it foreign body, source of infection. They continued cleaning the wound, irrigating with saline, carefully inspecting every inch of surrounding muscle. 2 surgical drains were placed. The arm was packed and left open. Standard protocol for infected fasciotomy cases. There would be more surgeries, more debridements, but for now, they had stopped the worst of it. For now, she was alive. Emma woke slowly. The first thing she registered was the beeping. The same one from the ER, steady, insistent, far away. Her throat was dry, her lips cracked. She couldn't feel her right arm. She opened her eyes. Blurry ceiling tiles, a curtain, the sterile scent of alcohol wipes and plastic tubing. Pain surged through her shoulder like lightning. A low groan escaped her lips. Karen stood beside the bed instantly. Emma? Emma tried to speak but only managed a raspy croak. Karen pressed a cup of ice water to her lips. Sip, slowly. Emma obeyed. Each swallow felt like glass. When she finally found her voice, it was barely audible. What happened? Karen blinked hard. You're okay. You're safe. The surgery's done. Emma shifted, wincing. My arm, Karen hesitated. At that moment, Dr. Lewis walked in, his scrubs stained with faint traces of iodine. He gave a gentle smile. Welcome back, Emma. She blinked slowly, her eyes still glazed with confusion and pain. Can you move your fingers for me? Emma looked down. Her arm was heavily wrapped, elevated, with thick tubing leading out to collection bags. Her fingers poked out from the gauze like fragile bird bones. She tried to move them. A twitch, a slight bend. That's good, Dr. Lewis said. That's really good. Emma turned her eyes to him. Did I lose anything? Dr. Lewis pulled up a chair. We had to perform what's called a fasciotomy. We opened the muscle compartments to relieve pressure and stop the infection from spreading. We removed a significant amount of dead tissue. Emma's face tightened. So, what now? You'll need more surgeries to clean the area. Probably skin grafts later. Physical therapy will be a long road. Karen stepped closer, her voice trembling. But your arm is still here. Emma swallowed hard. Will it work the same? Dr. Lewis paused. Maybe not fully. There was muscle loss. Some of the strength won't come back. But you're young, and if you stay committed to recovery, we'll get you as far as possible. Emma stared at the ceiling. Silent, Karen wiped her eyes. There's something else you should know. Dr. Lewis pulled a small clear jar from his pocket. Inside it, floating in saline, was the tiny piece of wood. This was inside your shoulder, he said. It looks like an old splinter, deep, maybe from leaning on something. Your skin grew over it so it looked like a blackhead, but it wasn't. Once you popped it, the infection had a gateway. Emma stared at it, horrified. That's it? That's what almost cost you your life. Her breath caught. The dress, the game, the scholarship. Her hand slowly reached out, weakly brushing the side of the jar. All that? From that? She closed her eyes as tears slipped down her cheeks. The days that followed were a blur of pain. Antiseptic smells and beeping machines. Emma drifted in and out of sleep, her body heavy from painkillers, her right arm a throbbing mystery beneath layers of gauze and surgical tubing. Every few hours, nurses would come to check her vitals, change her dressings, flush the drains. Each time they touched her, even gently, she flinched. Her fever came down slowly, but the ache remained, a deep, constant throb that no medication could fully erase. She hated the feeling of being trapped in the hospital bed, trapped in her own skin, trapped in the quiet, humiliating realization of how badly she had misjudged everything. Prom was tomorrow. Her friends were all getting spray tans and manicures. Group chats buzzed with talk of last-minute dress alterations, limo plans, after parties. And here she was, in a hospital gown, too weak to sit up straight. Her right arm completely immobile, stitched open in multiple places, with giant drains that collected dark red fluid like something from a horror movie. She hadn't looked at it directly yet. She couldn't. The first time a nurse tried to unwrap it, Emma had begged them to stop. Not yet, she'd whispered. Now she lay in the quiet room, watching dust float in the sunlight streaming through the blinds, the silence broken only by the hum of the 4-pump. Karen sat nearby, curled up in the recliner, reading quietly. Her face looked older than Emma remembered, lined with fatigue, pale with worry. She hadn't left the hospital since the surgery. Emma turned her head slowly. Mom, Karen looked up instantly. Yeah, baby? Did anyone call Coach Miller? Karen nodded. I did. And the school counselor. They all know. Emma swallowed. Her throat still felt raw. Did Ohio State still come? Karen hesitated. Yes, they did. Emma turned her face back toward the ceiling. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't want to shed. They were there for me. Karen didn't answer. Emma's voice cracked. What did Coach say? He said he'd keep your spot open as long as possible. But, honey, the season's almost over. I was gonna wear number 12. For the last time. Karen stood up and came over, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. You're gonna get through this. I missed everything, Emma whispered. Prom, state. I missed my shot. Karen's voice broke. I know. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. There was a long silence. Emma's voice, almost inaudible. Do you think they'll still offer me a scholarship? Karen didn't lie. I don't know. Emma stared at the ceiling so hard her eyes burned. The tears came anyway. The next morning, Lena came to visit. Emma nearly broke down at the sight of her. She looked so normal in jeans and a hoodie, holding a little brown paper bag with snacks and chapstick. Hey, superstar, Lena said softly, setting the bag down. Emma managed a half smile. You came. Of course I came. I told you I would. Lena sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Emma didn't speak for a moment. Then I was such a jerk to you. Lena shrugged. You were scared and stubborn. Emma turned her face. It's disgusting. My arm. I don't care. You should. I care that you're here. Emma's chin trembled. I should have gone to the doctor the first day. I know. I didn't want to miss prom or the game. I know that too. Emma wiped her face with her left hand. I missed everything anyway. Lena leaned in and rested her head gently against Emma's good shoulder. I'm just glad I didn't lose you. Emma closed her eyes and let the moment wrap around her like a warm blanket. For the first time in days she felt safe, not fixed, not healed, but safe. Later that afternoon, Dr. Lewis returned. He pulled the curtain closed and stood at the foot of the bed with a clipboard. Karen sat upright. Emma straightened as best she could. Emma, he began gently, you've made it through the most dangerous part. The infection is under control, for now. Emma nodded slowly. But there's more to do. Her stomach dropped. What? Dr. Lewis pulled up a chair. The initial debridement removed a large portion of necrotic tissue. But based on the latest imaging, there's still a pocket of compromised muscle that isn't responding. It's not as urgent, but it needs to come out before it causes further issues. Emma stared at him. Another surgery? I'm afraid so. Karen leaned forward. How soon? Tomorrow morning. We want to stay ahead of it. Keep her healing on track. Emma looked away. She couldn't do this again. The pain, the fear, the helplessness. Dr. Lewis gave her a moment. We'll use the same incision sites, so there won't be additional scarring, and this time we'll close some of the outer layers, depending on the tissue response. Emma whispered, Will I be able to move it? You'll have some motion, but it won't be the same as before. Recovery will take months, maybe longer. Her chest tightened. Volleyball? He paused. It's too early to say, which meant no. Emma stared blankly at the wall. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded. Dr. Lewis stood. We'll let you rest. A nurse will prep you tonight. I'll see you in the OR. He gave a small smile and left. Karen moved beside the bed. It's okay to be angry. I'm not angry. Karen stroked her hair. What are you then? Emma turned her head slowly. I don't know what I am. The second surgery was quieter. No frenzied rush. No red streaks marching toward the heart. But the room still held the weight of consequence. Dr. Lewis moved with a steady precision. The incisions clean, the debridement careful. What they found confirmed what imaging had hinted at. Deep tissue that, while not yet necrotic, had lost viability, a slow death of function. Muscle that would never fire again. He removed it in layers, exposing pale fascia underneath, working carefully to preserve what he could. It wasn't the chaos of emergency. It was controlled loss. By the time Emma was wheeled back into recovery, her arm was lighter, but not in a good way. Lighter because it was emptier, because pieces of her were gone. When she woke, everything hurt. Not the searing, sharp pain from before. This was different. A dull, consuming heaviness that wrapped itself around her chest and wouldn't let go. Karen was there, again. The chair beside the bed now bore her imprint. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed, but she smiled when Emma stirred. You're out of surgery, she said softly. Emma didn't answer. She turned her face toward the wall. After a while, Dr. Lewis came in. He didn't carry a clipboard this time. Just walked in and stood at the foot of the bed like someone about to deliver a verdict. Emma, he began, the procedure went as planned. We were able to remove all the remaining compromised tissue. The good news is, the infection is behind us now. She didn't turn around. But, he continued, the amount of tissue loss is significant. Your deltoid muscle was heavily affected. That's the one responsible for raising your arm above your head. Emma stared at the wall. Karen's hand found hers under the blanket. Dr. Lewis gave them a moment. You'll be able to move it to some degree. But strength, range of motion, those will be limited. Some functions may not return. I'm sorry. Still, she said nothing. I know this isn't easy to hear, he added, his voice low. But you're alive. And you still have your arm. Emma finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse, empty, but not the way it was. No, he said gently, not the way it was. He left quietly. Emma didn't speak for the rest of the day. The next morning the physical therapist came in, a cheerful woman in scrubs with a cart full of foam balls, resistance bands, and a clipboard. Hi, Emma. I'm Rebecca. I'll be working with you to help get some mobility back. Emma stared at the ceiling. I know it's hard right now, but the sooner we start moving, even just a little, the better your recovery long term. Emma closed her eyes. Can you try wiggling your fingers for me? She didn't move. Rebecca glanced at Karen, who stood helplessly near the door. I'll check back later, the therapist said, packing her things. Emma didn't watch her leave. She just stayed where she was, buried in silence. By the 5th day, Emma had stopped responding to texts. She turned her phone face down on the table and left it there. The group chat had moved on. Pictures from prom, blurry videos of dancing, selfies with perfectly curled hair and glittery dresses. No one mentioned her. She felt like a ghost watching her own life continue without her. Worse, she knew what they were saying. That girl from varsity, the one who almost died. Have you seen her arm? She squeezed a pimple and ended up in the hospital. I heard she lost her scholarship. Emma lay in bed, her body still healing but her mind unraveling. At night she dreamed of the gym, the echo of volleyballs hitting the hardwood, the sound of her teammates calling her name. But when she jumped to spike, her arm wouldn't lift. The ball dropped uselessly to the floor. Everyone stared. She woke up with tears drying on her cheeks. Karen tried everything. She brought her Emma's favorite soup, set up her laptop with movies, tried to talk about school, TV, even gossip, but Emma barely spoke. She stared out the window most days. Her right arm rested on a pillow, swaddled in clean bandages, unmoving. One morning, Karen tried to coax her out of bed. Let's go for a walk, she said. Just around the hall. Emma shook her head. You have to start moving, sweetie. I don't want people to see. Karen knelt beside her. See what? Emma gestured weakly. This. All of this. Karen's voice cracked. Emma, you didn't do anything wrong. I was stupid. You were young. I cared more about prom pictures than my health. Karen was quiet. I thought I was invincible, Emma whispered. I thought nothing bad could actually happen. Now you know better, Karen said softly. I don't want to be the girl with the scar. Karen took her hand. Then be the girl with the story. Emma looked at her mother for the first time in days. A story about what? About what happens when we ignore the warning signs. About how fast something small can become something huge. A story that might help someone else catch it early. Emma looked away. It's not enough. It might be for someone else. Silence, Karen added. But first you have to help yourself. Emma didn't answer. But later that night, when the nurse came in with Rebecca, the physical therapist, Emma didn't ask them to leave. She didn't move, but she didn't resist either. It was something. The first time Emma moved her arm, it felt like lightning tearing through her shoulder. It wasn't a full lift, just a slight flex of her bicep, enough to make the muscles twitch and the pain spike. But it happened. For the first time in weeks, something happened. Rebecca, the physical therapist, didn't cheer or clap. She just smiled softly. That's progress. Emma didn't smile back, but she didn't cry either. That was progress too. The exercises were slow, humiliating at times. Lifting a 1-pound foam ball, extending her fingers, bending her elbow. Things that once came naturally now required every ounce of willpower. Her body betrayed her constantly, trembling, seizing, resisting every stretch. But Emma kept showing up, even when it hurt, even when she hated it, especially when she hated it. Karen watched every session, holding her breath, offering encouragement, sometimes silently praying from the corner. The swelling had gone down, and the wounds had started to close. The drains were gone now. The bandages were lighter. But the truth was unavoidable. Her right arm was not the same, not even close. It hung lower, moved slower, ached constantly. And the mirror, God, the mirror, was a battlefield. For days, Emma refused to look. Until one night, alone in the hospital bathroom, she finally did. She stood in front of the mirror with the hospital gown pulled down to her waist. The fluorescent light overhead was unflattering, merciless. She stared at the mess of stitched-up incisions, the purple and red discoloration, the sunken contour of her shoulder where muscle used to be, the crater. That's what it looked like something had taken a bite out of her. Emma stared, frozen, for nearly a full minute. Then the tears came, deep, quiet sobs that made her shoulders shake and her knees buckle. She sat on the floor and wept, her arm cradled in her lap like it belonged to someone else. All the fear she'd buried, the shame, the rage. It spilled out at once, staining the sterile tile floor with grief. She cried for the girl who thought it was just a pimple. She cried for the dress hanging in her closet. She cried for the scholarship that never came, for the teammates who stopped texting, for the way her body had betrayed her. She cried until she couldn't cry anymore, and when she finally stood, wiping her face with shaking hands, something had shifted. The wound hadn't healed, but something inside her had cracked open. A few days later, Dr. Lewis came by during one of her therapy sessions. He watched from the corner as Emma struggled to hold a light resistance band with both hands and pull it apart, barely managing a quarter of the movement before she had to stop. She caught him watching and raised an eyebrow. "Don't you have a surgery to do?" He chuckled. "Probably. But I wanted to check in." Emma leaned back in the chair, sweating. "Let me guess. More bad news?" "Actually, no." He pulled up a stool beside her. "I've been thinking, when you're ready, I'd like to ask you to consider something." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Sounds ominous." "There's a health education assembly coming up at your school," he said. "They're covering early infection signs, wound care, teen health habits, basic stuff that too many kids overlook." Emma looked at him blankly. "I think your story could make a real impact," he continued. "Hearing it from you, not a nurse, not a textbook, a real person. Their peer." She scoffed. "So you want me to stand on stage and tell everyone I almost died because I squeezed a splinter?" He tilted his head. "That's one version. But I think you'd tell it better." Emma looked away. "Think about it," he said gently. "You've got a voice now. One people will listen to." She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. After he left, Rebecca handed her the band again. "Let's try it one more time." Emma stared at it, then pulled, just a little more than last time. Later that night, Emma pulled out her phone for the first time in days. There were unread messages from Lena, from her cousin in Colorado, even from one of the junior players on JV. But it was a message from Coach Miller that made her stop scrolling. "Emma, I just wanted to say no matter what happens next, I'm proud of you. You've always been more than an athlete. Don't let this take your fight. Call me when you're ready. We miss you." She stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "I'm not ready, but I'm getting there." It was strange how quickly the world had moved on without her. 2 weeks after her second surgery, Emma was finally discharged from the hospital. The doctors warned her recovery would continue for months, daily therapy, wound care, pain management. But she could go home. Home. The word felt unfamiliar. Her room looked exactly the same, the volleyball trophies on the shelf, her number 12 jersey still pinned above her desk, the prom dress hanging untouched in the closet. But she wasn't the same. She moved slower, her right arm still bound in a compression sleeve and light brace, hung at her side like an afterthought. Lifting anything heavier than a glass of water still sent pain through her shoulder. The mirror was a daily test of courage. At night she dreamed of before, of spiking balls, laughing in the locker room, dancing in the prom dress that still had its tags. But each morning, she woke up in this new version of herself. And yet, she kept going. Returning to school was harder than the hospital. At least, in the hospital, people knew what to say. At school, they just stared. The hallways were suddenly too narrow, the stares too obvious, the whispers just loud enough. "That's her, right? She almost died. Did you see her arm?" Emma walked with her shoulders hunched and her hoodie zipped high, even in the spring warmth. Her backpack sat on her left shoulder only. Every step felt like she was pushing against a current of memories. Lena met her by her locker, all smiles and determined normalcy. "You made it." Emma gave a small nod. "I almost turned around. I know." A pause. "Want to skip lunch? Go sit by the field?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. 2 days later, the school held its annual health awareness assembly in the auditorium. Emma had said yes to Dr. Lewis's idea, but only barely. Now she stood backstage, clutching her note cards in a trembling hand, the scar on her arm itching beneath the sleeve. Lena stood beside her. "You're gonna be great. What if they laugh? They won't. What if they don't care? They will." Emma took a shaky breath. The student body was buzzing beyond the curtain. Hundreds of students filled the rows, most expecting a boring lecture about hygiene and hand washing. They weren't expecting her. A staff member gave the signal. The curtain opened slightly. The principal introduced the assembly, then stepped aside. "And now," he said, "we have someone very special. Someone you all know. She's here to tell her story, not just because it's powerful, but because it might save a life one day. Please welcome Emma Carter." There was polite applause. Emma stepped forward into the light. For a moment, all she could hear was her own breathing. Then she began. My name is Emma Carter. Some of you might know me from volleyball. Some of you might have heard rumors. She looked around the room. Well, they're mostly true. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Emma continued, her voice steadier. About 2 months ago, I noticed what I thought was a blackhead on my shoulder. I popped it. No big deal, right? I didn't clean it. I went to practice. I ignored the pain. I hid the swelling. I kept saying I'll go to the doctor tomorrow. She paused, but tomorrow came too late. She held up a small photo, her swollen arm, red and huge. Gasps filled the room. By the time I got to the hospital, the infection had spread. I had a fever of 103, red streaks crawling toward my heart. I needed emergency surgery. Then a second surgery. I lost muscle, permanently. I lost strength. I lost the ability to raise my arm above my head. Another pause. I lost my volleyball season. I lost prom. I lost my scholarship offer. The auditorium was silent. I almost lost my arm. Even quieter now. I almost lost my life. Emma turned the next photo. Her surgical wound, the cratered scar. A ripple of stunned silence ran through the crowd. I tell you this not to scare you. Okay, maybe to scare you a little. Because what happened to me was preventable. I ignored the signs. I thought I was too busy, too tough, too young to get seriously sick. She looked directly at the front row. Don't be me. She took a deep breath. If something hurts, tell someone. If it's red, swollen, hot, streaked, go to the doctor. Don't wait. Don't assume. Don't put off care because of a game or a dance, or because you're afraid of looking dramatic. Her eyes scanned the room one last time. I didn't think it could happen to me. But it did. And now, this scar is part of me forever. So if this story can stop one person from ending up in that hospital bed, then maybe it's worth it. She stepped back. Silence. Then slowly, applause, not loud, not forced, genuine. It built from the front row and rolled through the crowd like a wave. Some students stood. Some wiped tears. Even teachers looked shaken. Emma stood there, eyes glassy, as the room rose to their feet. And for the first time since everything fell apart, she stood tall. A year later, the scar was still there. So was the nerve pain, especially on cold days. And the numb patch near her deltoid that she'd likely never feel again. Her right arm had regained some strength, some function, but never fully. She could brush her hair again, write short notes, even carry a small grocery bag if she used both arms together. But she would never serve a volleyball again, and that was okay. Because in losing one future, Emma had discovered another. It started the week after her school assembly. Emails flooded in, from teachers, from students, from other schools asking if she'd come speak to their classes. She thought it was a one-time thing, but people kept asking. Soon, Emma started a blog. She called it One More Day, a nod to the phrase that almost cost her everything. She wrote about pain, about fear, about learning to forgive her body. She wrote about splinters, literal and metaphorical, about healing and humility. The blog took off quietly at first, but then it was shared by a school nurse association, then a youth health nonprofit. Then a local journalist reached out for an interview. Then came the podcast, an episode titled, The Girl Who Waited Too Long. She sat in her bedroom, speaking into a borrowed microphone, her hands still weak, her voice stronger than it had ever been. I didn't think a pimple could almost kill me, she said on the show. But it wasn't just the bump, it was the denial, the delay, the silence. The episode went viral. She got emails from teenagers in other states, from a mother who took her kid to the doctor just in case after reading Emma's post, from a boy who said, "Your story made me stop picking at my face with dirty nails." Emma read every message. And every time someone said, "You helped me catch something early," she felt like maybe, just maybe, her pain had saved someone else's. She didn't go to college on an athletic scholarship. Instead, she applied to smaller liberal arts schools. She chose one close to home, somewhere she could drive to on her own terms, with a flexible schedule that worked around her therapy. She majored in public health. When asked why public health, she simply replied, "Because I wish someone had taught me how infections really work." By her second semester, she was volunteering with a local teen health initiative. She visited middle schools and high schools, standing in front of classrooms with rolled-up sleeves and a slide deck of photos, graphic, unfiltered, real. Students stared, shocked, silent, as she walked them through her journey. Sometimes they asked questions, sometimes they just hugged her after, but always, they listened. Her prom dress still hung in her closet, tags attached. She never returned it, not because she still planned to wear it, but because it reminded her that beauty is temporary, and health is fragile, and every decision, even the small ones, has a ripple effect. The volleyball jersey was framed now, but not for sports glory. Next to it, she'd pinned a short note. This jersey taught me discipline. This scar taught me humility. Together, they made me stronger than I ever was on the court. One spring afternoon, Emma returned to her old high school for another health workshop, this time for the freshmen. The auditorium was smaller than she remembered. The students looked even younger. She waited backstage, flipping through her note cards though she didn't need them anymore. The nerves still came, of course, but they were different now, productive. When her name was called, she stepped out into the light. The microphone felt natural in her hand. "Hi," she said. "I'm Emma Carter. And I want to tell you how I almost lost my arm, and why you don't have to." She paused, let them settle. She didn't show them the goriest pictures this time. She didn't need to. Instead, she showed them a slide titled, "What Red Streaks Really Mean." She explained sepsis, how infections spread, how to recognize the difference between irritation and inflammation. She listed symptoms to watch for, and she said them slowly, clearly. If it's red, hot, swollen, and hurts more each day, don't wait. If you see red lines moving up your skin, go to the ER. That's your body screaming for help. Don't wait for just one more day. A hand went up, a boy with shaggy hair and a nervous voice. "What if we're embarrassed to tell someone?" Emma smiled. "Then you're just like I was." She rolled up her sleeve and showed them the scar. A few kids gasped. A few leaned forward. "This scar? It cost me prom. It cost me volleyball. It cost me control over my own body. Because I was too proud to ask for help, too busy to go to urgent care, too afraid to seem weak." She took a step forward. "Let me be the weak one for you. I already paid the price. You don't have to." The auditorium was quiet. One girl wiped her eye. Emma looked around at all their faces, some curious, some horrified, some deeply affected. Then, slowly, she lifted her right arm, not all the way, but higher than she had ever lifted it in public, up past her chest, just under her shoulder. The audience watched. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't strong, but it was hers, and it was enough. She smiled. "I'm still healing. That never really stops. But every day, I move a little further. Every day, I try to make this story worth telling." Then she said the line she always ended with, "Don't wait, don't wonder, don't be like me, because life doesn't always give you a second chance, but if it does, use it well." The room stayed silent for a beat, then applause erupted, not polite, not automatic. It was the kind that echoed, the kind that carried weight. Emma stepped back, tears in her eyes, not from grief, from purpose. She had once been the girl who waited too long. Now she was the voice that arrived just in time,